Good evening and welcome to tonight's story time. We have real, eerie tales found in the darker corners of Reddit. They're perfect for late-night listening, passing the time during chores, or adding a touch of unease to your evening. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. My grandfather decomposed in his favorite chair. My family kept it, and now it's trying to take me too. My grandparents' house is mine now. They passed within a year of each other, and as the only grandchild, the small, quiet house on the edge of town fell to me. I wasn't ready to sell it. It's a time capsule, filled with their 60 years of shared life. The faint scent of my grandmother's lavender soap still clings to the bathroom towels. My grandfather's worn-out paperback westerns are still stacked on his nightstand. Moving in felt less like a fresh start, and more like becoming the new live-in caretaker of a museum of memories. And in the center of the living room, like a king's throne, sits the chair. It's a massive wingback armchair, upholstered in a dark, oxblood red leather that's cracked and worn smooth in all the right places. It's a piece of furniture from an era when things were built to last forever. It's imposing. It commands the room, and it was my grandfather's favorite place on earth. Every memory I have of him in this house, he's in that chair. Watching the news, reading his books, falling asleep with his mouth slightly agape, a gentle snore rattling in his chest. It was his. When I first moved in, I saw it as a piece of him I got to keep. A comforting presence. After a long day of unpacking boxes and sorting through a lifetime of trinkets, I'd sink into it. And that's when the feeling would start. It wasn't a bad feeling, not at first. It was just heavy. The moment my back hit the worn leather, a profound, almost unnatural wave of exhaustion would wash over me. My eyelids would feel heavy. The deep cushions, which my grandmother was always plumping, seemed to sigh and settle around me, hugging me a little too tightly. The soft leather would creak like a contented groan. It was easy to let go. My thoughts would turn to mud, my focus would blur, and the silence of the house would be replaced by a low, humming drone in my ears. The first few times, I'd catch myself just as I was about to nod off, shaking my head and pushing myself out of the chair's deep embrace. It felt like surfacing from underwater. I'd stand up, feeling disoriented and strangely weak, my heart beating a little too fast. I chalked it up to stress, to the emotional and physical toll of the move. But it kept happening, every single time. I could be wired on 3 cups of coffee, but the second I sat in that chair, the sleepiness would hit me like a tranquilizer dart. It started to feel less like comfort and more like a strange, invisible force. I started to describe the sensation to myself as drowning. It felt like the chair was a pocket of deep, still water, and sitting in it was like stepping off a ledge. It pulled you down, into the quiet, into the dark. I began to avoid it. I'd sit on the stiff, uncomfortable sofa instead. I'd eat at the kitchen table. But the chair was always there in the corner of my eye, watching, waiting. Its deep red leather seemed darker in the evenings, absorbing the light in the room. I felt judged by it. A piece of furniture. I know how insane that sounds. About a month after I moved in, my mom came over to help me finish sorting through some old photo albums. She saw me perched on the edge of the sofa and smiled sadly. "You're not sitting in the chair," she said. It wasn't a question. "Nah," I said, trying to sound casual. "That thing's dangerous. I sit in it for 2 seconds and I'm out for the count. It's like a black hole for consciousness." Her smile faltered, just for a second. A strange, shadowy expression passed over her face before she smoothed it away. "Your grandfather was the same way. He could fall asleep in that chair in the middle of a marching band parade. He used to say it was the most comfortable thing he'd ever owned. Said it just. Fit him, it's more than comfortable," I found myself saying, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "It's heavy. It feels like it's pulling you in." My mom was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the chair. The look in her eyes was one I'd never seen before. It was a complicated cocktail of love, grief, and something else. Something darker, fear maybe. "He loved that chair to death, honey," she said, her voice soft and final. She turned back to the photo album and changed the subject. The conversation was over. Her words stuck with me. "He loved that chair to death." The incidents got stranger. One Saturday, I was exhausted from a long week. I made the mistake of just dropping into the chair for a moment to take my shoes off. Just for a moment. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. The room was dark outside. My neck was stiff and a line of drool had dried on my chin. I checked my phone. It was 10 p.m. I had lost 7 hours. 7 hours gone in an instant. I felt groggy, but more than that, I felt drained. Not like I'd had a restful nap, but like something had been siphoned out of me. My whole body ached with a deep, bone-weary fatigue. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and looked at the chair. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, I noticed something I hadn't seen before: a dark stain. It was deep in the seat cushion, near the back, almost a part of the leather's natural pattern, but not quite. It was a large, irregular shape, a few shades darker than the surrounding oxblood red. It looked organic. I spent the next day trying to clean it. I used leather soap, conditioner, everything I could find, but the stain wouldn't lift. It was like it wasn't on the leather, but in it. The more I scrubbed, the more I felt like I was just polishing a scar. And as I worked, a smell began to fill the room. It wasn't just the familiar scent of old leather and my grandfather's pipe tobacco. It was something else, buried deep within the fibers of the chair. A faint, sickly sweet, coppery odor. The smell of old meat. I recoiled, my stomach churning. I started to feel a real, tangible fear of the chair. It wasn't just a piece of furniture anymore. It was a place where I lost time. A thing with a stain that wouldn't wash out and a smell that reminded me of a butcher's shop. The breaking point came last week. I was cleaning out the hall closet, a task I'd been putting off for months. It was full of my grandmother's old coats, boxes of holiday decorations, and at the very back, a small, sealed cardboard box labeled "Personal Papers, Dad." My mom must have packed it away after the funeral. My curiosity got the better of me. I figured it was just old bank statements and tax returns, but I felt I should go through it before tossing it. It was mostly what I expected. But at the bottom, beneath a stack of old utility bills, was a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon. They were letters my mother had written to her sister, my aunt, who lives across the country. They were dated from the summer 2 years ago, the summer my grandfather died. I knew I shouldn't read them. It was a violation of privacy. But I was drawn to them. I needed to understand the weirdness my mom had shown, the feeling of wrongness that permeated the house, a feeling that was concentrated in that damned chair. I untied the ribbon. The first few were about his declining health, his refusal to go to the doctor. Then I got to the last one. The letter that explained everything. My hands began to shake as I read my mother's familiar cursive. "Dearest Sarah, I'm sorry I haven't been able to call. I haven't been able to speak about it. The funeral was. It was what it was, but you need to know what actually happened. You need to know how we found him. The police report will say he died of a heart attack, and that's true. But that's not the whole story. He hadn't answered our calls for over a week. It was that awful heat wave in July, and I was so worried. We kept calling and calling. Finally, I used my spare key and went inside. The smell, Sarah. Oh God, the smell. I'll never get it out of my head. I thought an animal had died in the walls. I found him in the living room. He was in his chair. He had been there for the entire week. In the heat, I don't want to write down the details. You don't want to know them, just picture it. He had become a part of it. The coroner said it was the worst he's seen in 20 years. They had to practically peel him off the leather. So much of him had soaked in. They took him away and I was left in the house with that thing, the chair. It was ruined, it was horrifying, it was covered in. I should have thrown it out. I should have burned it. Any sane person would have. But I couldn't. It was his favorite chair. He spent half his life in it. It was the last thing that held him. It felt like throwing him away all over again. I know it sounds crazy. I know you'll think I've lost my mind, but I called one of those specialty cleaning services. The kind that deals with crime scenes. They took it away for a week. They used chemicals, ozone treatments, I don't know what else. They told me it was completely sanitized, completely clean. They said you'd never even know. So I brought it back. It's still there. Sometimes I look at it and all I can see is him, happy and reading his book. And other times, all I can see is how he was when I found him. I think keeping it was a mistake, Sarah. I think it holds more than just memories. I dropped the letter. My blood ran cold. I felt the bile rise in my throat, the stain. The smell, the drowning feeling. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't a metaphor. My grandfather had died in that chair. He had laid there for a week in the sweltering summer heat, and his body had putrefied. It had decomposed. It had liquefied and seeped and soaked into the cushions and the leather and the very frame of his favorite chair. The drowning sensation wasn't just sleepiness. It was the chair, saturated with the finality of death, trying to do to me what it had done to him. It was the memory of decomposition, a physical echo of a body breaking down. The chair hadn't just held him, it had consumed him. I stumbled out of the closet, my legs like jelly, and stared into the living room. The chair was no longer a piece of furniture. It was a tombstone, a monument to decay. A predator disguised as a comfortable place to rest. The dark red leather looked like dried blood. The worn arms looked like grasping limbs. The deep cushion was a waiting maw. It had had a taste, and it had been sleeping ever since. Now I was here. I was its new meal. I had to get it out, now. I grabbed one of the arms, intending to drag it out the front door. The moment my hand touched the leather, the feeling hit me, stronger than ever before. A wave of dizziness and exhaustion so profound my knees buckled. The air in the room grew thick and cold. I heard a sound, a low, wet, sighing sound that seemed to come from the chair itself. It wasn't the creak of leather. It was the sound of a lung emptying for the last time. My arm felt impossibly heavy, glued to the chair. I felt a phantom weight settle on my shoulders, pushing me down, urging me to just sit. To just rest for a minute, to give in, to drown. No, I gasped, wrenching my hand away as if from a hot stove. My mind raced. I couldn't just drag it out. It wouldn't let me. It would drain me, pull me in, and finish me right here. I needed to destroy it. I needed to desecrate it so thoroughly that there was nothing left. I ran to the garage. My hands found my grandfather's old wood-splitting axe. It was heavy, the handle worn smooth from his grip. I walked back into the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. The chair just sat there, waiting, radiating a palpable aura of hunger and death. I didn't hesitate. I raised the axe over my head and brought it down with a scream of rage and terror. The axe blade bit deep into the top of the wingback with a sickening, wet thump. It didn't sound like hitting wood and leather. It sounded like hitting flesh. A foul, sweet stench billowed out from the gash, a concentrated version of the smell I'd noticed before. It was the smell of the grave. I didn't stop. I hacked and I tore and I ripped. I was a man possessed. With every swing, I felt the chair's influence weaken. The sleepiness receded, replaced by a frantic, liberating energy. I splintered the wooden frame. I shredded the leather upholstery. I tore out handfuls of the deep, stained batting inside, which felt damp and spongy to the touch. It took an hour. When I was done, the chair was gone. In its place was a pile of shredded, stinking refuse. I dragged the pieces, armful by armful, out into the backyard, onto the concrete patio. I doused the pile in lighter fluid and threw a match on it. It went up with a roar. The flames burned a greasy black-orange color, and the smoke. The smoke was thick and black and carried that same horrific, sweet smell of decay across the entire neighborhood. It was the chair's final, dying breath. I stood there until the pile was nothing but a scorched black circle on the concrete and a pile of glowing red embers. The house feels different now. It's lighter, the air is cleaner. The profound silence has returned, but it's just empty now. It's not waiting, but I can't stop thinking about it. Was it just a chair? Just an object so saturated with a horrific event that it held a kind of psychic, toxic residue? I live in a small mountain town in Northern California. I think the mountain is alive. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Maybe as a warning. Maybe I just want to know that there's someone, anyone, who will listen to what I have to say and react appropriately. I live in a small town at the base of a semi-famous mountain, somewhere in Northern California. I'm not going to disclose exactly which town, however, it probably wouldn't be too difficult to figure it out. Our population is 3,165, a large percentage of which consists of rich old people and weed-smoking hippies. Objectively, it's a beautiful place. There are nice restaurants for the tourists, long hikes concluding in crashing waterfalls, and views from even the downtown windows that could be called breathtaking. To the locals like me, of course, these perks are somewhat watered down by years at the tiny, poorly funded high school and the 30-minute drive to get to the nearest Walmart. But even with that being said, the spirits here are generally high, especially during the summer. I won't lie, it's not like I've never noticed strange things. I think something paranormal or otherworldly can be said about any town, especially ones that get boring after living in them your entire life. Rumors spread, stories are born and passed around like souvenirs. My town is no exception to this rule. However, until a couple of weeks ago, these stories only scared me when it was dark outside. Something started feeling seriously wrong on a perfectly sunny Sunday afternoon. My friends and I went to the city park, as we sometimes did when sitting inside, playing GTA, and shit-talking the same people we knew in high school again. Did you hear that Jessica got pregnant? No way, I thought she was still in jail. Got boring. We sat by the rusty, slightly off-putting, 12-foot metal clown by the jungle gym. Why did they never get rid of that thing? Eating our supermarket sandwiches and trying to subtly hit a blunt from behind our sweatshirt sleeves, as the park was swarming, compared to usual with the spring rush of tourists, enjoying the sun and each other's slightly high conversation. Laughing at something my friend had said that I no longer remember but must have been funny at the time, I looked around the park. Everything seemed particularly lighthearted that day. There were children playing tag on the other side of the grass plain, people picnicking, dogs chasing sticks and joyfully returning them to their owners, and a family standing side by side, staring up at the white peaks of the mountain in what seemed like awe. Shouldn't the snow be gone by now? My friend said, following my gaze and motioning for the half-smoked blunt balanced between my fingers. It seems like it stays longer every year. Because it snows later and later, I replied, glancing around before passing her the weed I'd been babysitting. Global warming and whatnot. Weird, Marcy called from behind us. She was hanging upside down on the bars, her long hair nearly brushing against the gravel. It seems wrong for there to be that much snow up there in the middle of April. There isn't any snow down here, at least, Naomi said absent-mindedly next to me, taking a long drag. I watched her flick her short blonde bangs away from her increasingly reddening eyes. All three of us went quiet for a moment, listening to the warm breeze dance in the head of the metal clown behind us, creating a hollow sort of chime. I kicked at the rocks at my feet, enjoying my buzz. The sounds of the kids running around seemed far away to me, almost like my friends and I were in a little glass box. God, Naomi scoffed, breaking through the comfortable silence. She tried to hold in a snort. Fuckin' tourists. Haven't they ever seen a mountain before? I know, Marcy laughed. I looked up from my shoes, looking around for who they were talking about. It was immediately obvious. The same family that I had noticed before were still standing there, facing the mountain. They were turned away from us, but I could still tell that their eyes were locked directly on the peak, their heads synonymously tilted upwards. They hadn't moved an inch. How long had it been? As if reading my thoughts, Marcy swung down from the bars, landing with a clumsy crunch. Maybe I'm just high, she mumbled, frowning at them. But haven't they been standing there a while? Naomi scoffed again. Why don't they just take a picture? I swallowed my absence of saliva, shifting uncomfortably. My mouth was suddenly unbearably dry. Even from here, I could see the camera straps around the parents' necks, untouched. A small dog, maybe a Jack Russell Terrier, scurried in circles around them. It stopped and pawed at the child's calf, dropping the tennis ball in its mouth and yapping. The kid didn't react. None of them did. That, I didn't know what to say. I felt like all of the breath was being sucked from my lungs. That's weird, right? Super weird. Marcy shifted uncomfortably. She had gone silent. She took the blunt from Naomi's hand and stubbed it out against the metal jungle gym, flicking the roach to the ground and stepping on it. I think I should get home. I've got laundry to do. I didn't think she was telling the truth, but I felt a little uneasy too. I nodded, pulling my sweatshirt tight around my chest. As we made our way across the grass toward the parking lot, I couldn't help but glance back at the family. Something seemed so off about them, like something was deeply wrong and I just couldn't put my finger on it. But when I turned to look, it was like it never happened. The dog was yipping happily as the kid threw his ball, and the parents were sitting on the grass, aiming the cameras around their necks at the mountain and snapping away. Over the next week, everything seemed normal. I had almost forgotten about what had happened at the park. I spent most of the time that I wasn't at work, like usual, indoors, glued to my couch, watching the same Adam Sandler movies over and over again. Most people seem to think that the nice weather made them happier or somehow changed things. For me, it wasn't like that. Something about this town seemed to drag you down and keep you there. Even people who managed to move away, make something of themselves after high school. They always came back. This town drew you in somehow. I was snapped out of my work-sleep-eat cycle. Finally, the next Friday night. I heard honking outside my bedroom window and threw on my slightly more presentable pair of pajamas, rushing outside to find Naomi's dad's beat-up Toyota Corolla parked haphazardly against the curb. "Fancy a drive?" she called out the window in a terrible British accent. I faked a laugh and climbed into the passenger seat, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes. Sure, why not? Our late-night drives were far more common when we were teenagers, but now we seemed to take them less for granted. She cranked up the staticky stereo, some shitty local pop station nearly deafening me. "Sorry," she barked over the music. No Bluetooth. A pile of empty beer bottles and cans clanked at my feet as I hopelessly knocked them around, reaching desperately for the handle on the ceiling. "Are these yours or your dad's?" I asked, trying not to let my voice shake as she careened around a corner. "Probably a little bit of both," she yelled back with a smile. She took another rough turn, and I slammed against the passenger side door. I had remembered our drives in high school being a bit more relaxing, but then again, maybe I had been the one behind the wheel. I subtly turned the music down a few notches as we took the narrowing road out of town, the lights from windows growing in scarcity and the evergreens swallowing us as we took off into the forest. "Remember when we used to drive up here and smoke and watch those weird PSA videos?" Naomi shouted. She was rolling her window down, letting in the icy breeze and making it even more difficult for me to hear her. Up here, I looked out the window at the inclining and increasingly windy road. She was taking us up the mountain. It wasn't like that was crazy or abnormal for us, but for some reason, my heart sank into my stomach. I closed my eyes, and all I could see was the back of the heads of that family, perfectly still, staring up at the skyline. I didn't open my eyes again until the car rolled to a stop. I hadn't noticed it happening, but the music was quiet now, the static sound overtaking most of any of the discernible lyrics. "Whoa," Naomi said. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the light. "Wait, the light." We were parked at the bottom of the mountain, where the hikers that often climbed to the top usually set up base camp. The mountain was biggest from here, stretching across the horizon, towering above us like a monolith. We had come here so many times, and it had always been a little breathtaking, but now. I let out a wheeze. The sky was as bright as daylight. The snow-covered peaks seemed to almost glow or even swell. I swore I could even see clouds in the sky, peeking out from behind the trees. I checked the time on the car's dashboard. 1:13 a.m. It had been pitch dark out moments ago, yet I would have sworn it was long past sunrise up here. The stereo crackled to life with a horrible sound, making me jump. The static seemed to creep up my arms and under my t-shirt, giving me goosebumps. D. "Naomi," I whispered, frozen in place. She was already reaching for my hand, digging her fingernails into my sweaty palm. "Dee. Don't stop. What the fuck?" she exhaled. Both of us were like deer in headlights, staring dumbly at the radio. In my peripheral vision, the mountain glowed. The voice didn't sound human, nothing like the optimistic pop artist that had been singing before. Nothing like anything I had ever heard before, or could even have conjured up in my head. Certainly nothing I can explain in words now. "Don't stop looking. both the terrible screeching and the voice stopped at once, engulfing us in terrifying silence, and I found my gaze snapping back to the mountain. Right then, as crazy as it sounds, I knew it was breathing. I could almost feel it next to me, like a mouth right next to my ear. "Look at us," it whispered, in clear and perfect English. I didn't need to say anything. Naomi was already shifting gears and peeling out of the parking lot. Neither of us said a word the entire drive back to town, and when she finally parked in front of my house, we took each other's hands and walked inside. She slept in my bed that night, and neither of us said a word until it was bright outside, properly bright, and the birds were reassuringly chirping outside my window. The next few days were a haze. Luckily, I had the whole weekend, so there was no need to leave and go to work. Naomi stayed over until she was confident enough to drive home alone, and although it was nice to have the space, the house felt eerily empty without her. I couldn't even wrap my head around what I had seen, what I had heard. All I knew was I didn't want to leave, didn't want to see that mountain again, even for a second. I shielded my windows with curtains, and when that didn't feel like enough, I boarded them up. I put my computer, my radio, everything but my phone in a closet at the end of the hall. I didn't want to take any chances. I didn't ever want to feel that way again, the way I had at the base of that mountain. I couldn't sleep or eat. By the end of Sunday, I felt ready enough to sip at a bowl of chicken noodle soup from a can and climb into bed. I could feel the dark circles under my eyes getting worse, threatening to swell and swallow them up altogether. With my room completely blacked out by the boarded windows, I could finally close my eyes. I don't know why I woke up when I did. Maybe I had tripped on something. All I knew was I was back exactly where we had been that night, where we had sat in the car and the radio had spoken to us. I remember not quite knowing if I was still asleep or fully awake, but I could feel the ground beneath my bare feet, aching and raw as if I had walked for hours. The wind whistled in my ears, my thin pajamas doing little to protect me from the cold. I tried to keep my balance in my strange dream-like state, looking up. There was a man, or what looked like a man. His silhouette was almost completely indistinguishable. It was impossible to make out any details. It was like a child had taken scissors to where the rocky terrain met the backdrop of the mountain and tried to cut out the shape of a person. He was moving. I couldn't tell if it was towards me or away. I stumbled forward blindly. I felt scared, so scared I couldn't breathe, but it was like the cold was numbing all of my emotions, or like they were buried deep inside of me somehow. I didn't feel like myself, only like a body. Only like a pair of legs. "Hey," I called out weakly, my voice swallowed by the screaming wind. It sounded like 1,000 voices whispering, drowning out my own. "Hey," I tried again, louder. The man didn't respond. He didn't react at all. As I grew closer, I realized he was walking away from me after all, toward the mountain. My eyes were drawn up toward the mountain again. Glowing, breathing, I had to narrow my eyes until they were almost closed in order to focus. There was less snow. It seemed ridiculous, but that was what immediately popped into my head. There was far less snow on the mountain than there had been a few days ago, as if large patches had suddenly melted away, but it hadn't gotten any warmer outside. In fact, it looked like it was melting before my very eyes. It looked like it was moving, shifting. Migrating, I strained my vision, trying desperately to understand what I was seeing. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the snow melting, it was people. There were people up there, thousands of people, moving. Somehow I made it back down. It's hard to remember what happened after that. No one seems to want to listen to me. Even Naomi seems to be forgetting what we witnessed. Everyone wants to brush me off or tell me I'm another conspiracy theorist, like so many of the people who live here. I don't know how to convince them of what I saw, but I saw it. I don't know what to do. There are people up there. There is something wrong with the mountain, something that calls to them. I don't know what it does to them or how. It almost got me that night. Every night I hear it breathe, and every day I see more tourists staring, walking towards the base. If you're ever driving through the mountains of Northern California and you feel compelled to stop your car and walk, keep driving. And I'm begging you, turn off your radio. I think the ants did something to me. Please read this. Please help me. I don't know what to do. I don't know where else to go. I'm afraid to tell anyone about what is happening to me because I'm sure they'd just ship me off to a mental health facility for the criminally disturbed as soon as I opened my mouth. If you had told me even a fraction of what was about to happen to me a month ago, I would have thought you were insane too. I still would, I think. I'm not entirely sure what is real. I'm currently sitting on a curb somewhere 2 towns over from where I live, waiting for my ex-roommate to pick me up, and then, I don't know what happens then. I'm half sure she's going to pull up with the police in tow, and when they look at me, they'll immediately open fire. At the very least, they'll lock me up for a long time for what I've done. Until that happens, I'll write down everything I know and pray that someone, anyone, has some kind of answer for me. Whatever's happening to me, whatever the ants did to me, it hurts. Dude, I've told you, don't kill the ants, it'll just attract more. I examined my bright red palm, smeared with the tiny black bug and throbbing from the force of smacking it against the counter. Hannah's scowling face met my gaze as I wiped it off on the back of my pants. I had never thought she liked me much, but over the past year I had come to accept that that was just the way she was, and through that realization, we had developed a sort of symbiotic form of friendship. It was just like in nature, like a bee spreading the pollen of a flower in exchange for nectar. Hannah took the trash out every Saturday night, and in return, I did the weekly grocery shopping and lugged the bags up the 3 flights of stairs in our apartment building. Recently, though, I think her feelings towards me have become conflicting. First, I had my nasty breakup with Sean, and then there was the incident. I tried to pout. "Are you still mad at me?" She sipped her coffee, looking me up and down indecipherably. "I just wish you would tell me the truth." I remember groaning melodramatically, throwing myself against the kitchen counter. "I am telling you the truth. It wasn't my fault. It was fair that she didn't believe me. I probably wouldn't either. But seriously, no one was home when that ant colony toppled over and shattered. I hated those ants. I hated the stupid glass box that took up almost the entire bedside table, squirming with life in the form of wiggly 6-legged dots. It had been Sean's from one of his stupid environmental science classes. When he had brought it over, thoroughly drenched in sweat and beet red from the effort of carrying it up all those stairs, I had said that I thought they only did stuff like that in middle school. He had just shrugged. Then he had tried to tell me that all the ants actually had names, and I had laughed at the pure lunacy of expecting me to remember them all. I hated those ants and how they reminded me of him. I hated that they were the only part of him that was left in my room. I stayed up so many long nights after he moved out, just watching them tunnel. It almost became a source of peace at times, peering into their little bulb-shaped homes in the dirt, like some sort of malevolent god, knowing I could smash their happy houses into pieces in an instant if I pleased. Then I started to scare myself with that train of thought, and I moved the glass colony into the living room. Both Hannah and I were gone for the day when it fell. I'm sure it wasn't very pleasant to get home to that, but still. I just don't see why it had to be in the living room. "Too painful," I said shortly, reaching over to the box of supermarket cupcakes in front of her and dragging my finger through the chocolate icing, bringing it to my mouth. She glared at me. "Aren't you supposed to be on a diet?" I shrugged. I was, before I broke up with Sean. I was, before my sugar cravings became unbearable and unavoidable. Whatever, I had stopped caring about what I looked like by then. It wasn't like anyone was desiring me. "Whatever," she sighed, setting down her coffee mug and tying her hair up in a ponytail. "I have to go buy more ant poison. I wish so dearly I could go back and tell myself something was deeply, terribly wrong." I stopped going to my classes a few days later. Instead of slowly getting better, like all of my prior breakups, this one seemed to only grow in the strength with which it tore me apart. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want anyone to see me. It felt too wrong. That being said, being in the apartment wasn't much better. No matter how much ant poison we put around the house, the problem didn't seem to go away, and it was starting to make me feel itchy. It didn't help that it was spring, the beginning of prime ant season. We found those stupid bugs everywhere. In the pantry devouring our food, in the kitchen, in the bathroom underneath the counter. I even found a few in my bed, marching in a line across my crumb-riddled comforter. I have never been a particularly tidy person, but suddenly, I felt like a professional maid, constantly rearranging and scrubbing to try and trick the swarm. I think I started obsessing over the ants initially just to stay off my phone. When that didn't work, I would sit in the shower, letting the hot water burn off the itchiness. One night, neither of those things worked. I found myself drifting down the stairs in my slippers, climbing into my beat-up Chevy, and speeding off into the night. I was barely awake even by the time I reached the grocery store. I purchased 2 boxes of muffins, a bag of those lollipops with gum in the center, and an entire sheet cake that read "Congratulations" on the top in scrawling blue icing. I barely remember driving home, nor coming back inside. It was like I drifted off into a strange dream, and when I came to again, I was knelt over next to my bed, my face and hands covered in frosting and my eyes locked on where my bedroom floor met the wall. A line of ants marched along the crevice, blissfully unaware of my fixed gaze, some carrying crumbs of cake on their backs that were far bigger than their tiny bodies. The itchiness really started to amp up after that night, primarily on my face. I tried lotions, different soaps, everything. Nothing seemed to help. I chalked it up to paranoia. Sometimes I looked in the bathroom mirror and could swear I saw ants ducking in and out of my hairline. When Hannah left town to visit her parents, I went with her, even though she never really said I could. "I'm leaving for a bit, gonna go see my family," she had said. "I think this breakup is really getting to me," I had said. She had nodded, and that was that. When I fell asleep in the car on the drive, I realized how little I had been actually sleeping that week. I remember that trip actually really helping. Hannah's parents have a really nice place right on the lake, and I spent a week sitting by the water, feeling more grounded than I had in a long time. I was included in meals, and her parents used that opportunity to question me about my life. "How are classes? Are you still with that nice ginger boy?" But overall, I stayed out of their way. I just wanted to breathe the fresh air. I even caught up on some schoolwork. When we got back home, I had a fresh outlook on life. My hair was washed, the itchiness had subsided, and I hadn't even thought about texting Sean in a few days. When I climbed into my bed, pulling the cool sheets up over my head, I thought I would finally get a good night's rest in my own room. Then I woke up, screaming. I remember my vision being blurred even in the darkness of my room. I could tell it was blurred. And my face hurt. More than hurt, it felt like the bones in my face were twisting, contorting, being slowly pulled out of my skin. My teeth ached as if I had been curb stomped. I fell out of bed, taking the sheets with me, and sprinted to the bathroom, letting out strangled gasps of pain the entire way. I flipped on the bathroom light and struggled to examine myself in the mirror, my eyes filled with tears. Hannah banged on the door with her fists, tried the doorknob, then banged again. "Are you okay? What's going on?" "I'm fine," I gurgled, pulling my lips back from my teeth. Nothing looked wrong, but the pain was still there, like a mallet was slamming into my face over and over again. I felt like I might have a heart attack. "G, go back to bed. Let me in, Jesus Christ." When I finally opened the bathroom door, I nearly collapsed into my sleepy-eyed roommate. She scrambled to catch me, lowering me to the floor awkwardly. I barely remember that trip to the ER. I remember sobbing in the waiting room, Hannah looking very uncomfortable, and a nurse poking and prodding me. I remember questions, so many questions, like, "What was the last thing you had to eat?" And "Are you on any medication?" I tried to answer all of them, but my teeth felt too big in my mouth to speak. I remember Hannah telling them I was going through a pretty rough breakup, like she was hinting that I was having a psychotic break. The doctors decided it was a migraine instead, and sent me home with a bottle of over-the-counter pain meds. When we got home, sometime in the range of 4 a.m., I went straight to my laptop. I had no idea what to search, so I stared dumbly at the glowing screen for what must have been 10 whole minutes. "Ants cause illness?" Search. The answer was a resounding yes, they do. Sometimes. My screen stabbed me with words like Shigella, Clostridium, Salmonella, Staph, Strep, E. coli, fungi. I frowned and brought my cursor back to the search bar, tapping the delete button in a daze. Ants, search. Stupid, I know, but I don't remember my thought process. I was moving as if I was in a dream. By the time the sun began to light up my bedroom, I knew way too much about ants. Ants evolved from wasps. Ants have a division of labor system. Ants can carry things 50 times their own weight. Ants have queens whose purposes are to lay eggs and drones whose purposes are to fertilize the queen's eggs. After they mate, the queen's wings fall off and the male dies. Ants operate as a unified entity. Ants have colonized almost every landform on the planet. I couldn't stop reading. A pop-up on my screen finally snapped me out of it at almost 8 a.m., bold and capitalized letters flashing in my face. Have an ant problem? How long had I been sitting there? How long had there been that scratching sound in the wall behind my bed? I stood up, my legs almost completely numb, causing me to crumple to the carpet. With my remaining strength, I crawled over to the bed on my hands and knees, using it to support myself and pressing my ear against the wall. There it was. Almost silent, but there. I followed the sound down the wall, down, 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 until I was blocked by the bed frame. Without even pausing to think, I forced myself to my feet and lifted the bed frame and all, tossing it to the other side of the room. It slammed against the wall, cracking loudly. At the bottom of the wall, where my bed had been, a swarm of ants crawled in and out of a tiny hole. There must have been at least 100 of them. The itchiness in my face returned with a vengeance, and I blindly shoved my finger into the hole, beginning to rip the wallpaper and drywall apart. Over and over again, I grabbed and ripped, my fingernails searing with pain, dust, and debris filling the air. When I was finally satisfied, nearly the entire front of the wall was torn away, and I stumbled backwards, coughing into my arm. Behind my bedroom wall, there were thousands of ants. Maybe millions. My eyes couldn't focus enough to make it out. They crawled and scrabbled through makeshift paths that had been carved into the plaster, trails that wove into one another and curled down the length of the expanse. They seemed to buzz in my head, scratching tirelessly at the material. They were everywhere. Again, I don't remember much of what happened after that. I never told Hannah about what I found. I don't know why. I was trapped in my mind with the buzzing, the scratching. I know that I raided the pantry. I spread every dessert we had out on the kitchen floor and dug into them with my hands, stuffing my face with sugar. I couldn't get enough to feel satisfied. Seeing the colony swallowing my room had made me hungry in a way that made me feel like I would never again be full. I know that sometime in those next few days, Hannah told me she was moving out. She had this look on her face, something like disgust, as she cracked open my bedroom door, pinching her nose like she couldn't stand my stench. I didn't smell anything. That being said, I couldn't hear or see much either. Still can't. She told me I needed to get help. I knew I didn't need help. There was nothing wrong with me, except for a few ants and my insatiable sweet tooth. I don't remember destroying the other walls of the apartment, tunneling into them with my bare and bleeding hands, or smearing rot and frosting over the windows as if something would smell it and come. I remember flashing in and out of reality, being hit with realization, and then slipping back under like a drug trip. I definitely don't remember getting into the car last night or driving 2 towns over, filthy and hurting, but I know that it must have happened. I do remember knocking on Sean's door and him opening it with a smile as if nothing was wrong and saying that he had been expecting me to show up. I do remember not really caring. I came to again on his bed, which was just a mattress on a bedroom floor. His room was riddled with boxes, most of them not even opened yet from the move. He was next to me, but he didn't move, even when I shook him and said his name. I rolled him over and stared into his frozen face. I didn't need to check his pulse. I knew he was dead. Now I'm sitting on the curb, waiting. I've been wandering for what feels like hours. My phone will die soon, but it doesn't really matter. I don't really care if Hannah finds me at this point. Maybe I deserve to freeze to death. I wish I was still under that spell. I don't want to be conscious right now. I don't understand what is happening to me, and I really, really don't want to. I'm afraid the answer is far worse than not knowing. I know I killed him. Somehow, I killed him, even if it wasn't on purpose. I can't get his smiling face out of my head, his "I've been expecting you." He was happy to see me, even in my horrible, deformed state. My back hurts and my face hurts. I'm scared to touch it or, God forbid, open up my camera out of fear of what I'll feel or see looking back at me. I won't touch or look at myself at all. Something feels wrong with my abdomen, too, like it's being sucked into itself, like it's changing. I just want to go home. My stomach feels strange, like it's too full. Please help me. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed these stories. As always, all the story links are in the description. If you had a good time, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. See you next time.